there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Here we go. Hello and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths, the podcast by Collaboration Global, where we look into people's backgrounds, people who think they're just ordinary folk, and actually they are rather special. And I'm very delighted to say I have a special guest with us today who is on a mission, and that's what I like, when people are on a mission to make the world a better place. So Dana Theus, wonderful to have you with us. If I said your name right, remind me again. Theus?
Dana Theus, yes.
Theus. Oh, I got it right. Okay. I got the
That's
Dana
the American version. The European version is Dana Theus.
Oh, okay. I like both, actually. It's a bit like me. If I go to America, everyone calls me Gil instead of Jill. I say I'm a Jillian, so it's the shortened version, and Tinny instead of Tiny. But hey ho, that's what makes it interesting. That's an easy conversation starter, isn't it? When people ask you how to pronounce your name. Dana, you are on LinkedIn as being I'm just looking at your title. You've got Unlocking Feminine Power in Leadership. Immediately, my mind goes to the inequalities of the world that we are in, the way women are treated in the corporate world, the way women can be treated in the everyday world, and how we've had struggles over the years, but how it's getting better, and how I view my own life when I first started work and where I am now. So there's lots and lots of stuff that we're going to unpack today. So if you're listening to this podcast, please go on to the YouTube or to wherever you find the podcast and put in any questions that you might have for Dana, because I'm really excited to find out how she started this. Because really, for you to unleash feminine power, I think we should all be doing that. Every single person on the planet should be doing that, but we don't. So how did it start for you, this mission that you're on, this vision of helping women to become more empowered? What was your epiphany moment, do you think? Did you have one?
I had several, but I love the hidden depths concept, because I want to go a level deeper even in what we're talking about here, because to me, unleashing, it didn't always mean this to me, but over time, unleashing feminine power isn't just something we do for women. It's something we do for men, and it's something we do for our cultures, both business cultures and our larger cultures. And without going too long on my soapbox,
please do.
I will just say that, and then I'll get to your question about epiphanies. But sometimes men will say, "What do you mean unlocking feminine power for men? What does that mean?" And I think that I look at power in two dimensions: internal power and external power. External power are the things we do in the world with our assets and our capital and our authority, and internal power being what we do with the powers that are within ourselves. And traditionally, if you look back to the yin yang and the sun and the moon and kind of all of the archetypal power dynamic polarizations, masculine is external and feminine is internal. It's never that simple.
No.
But to me, when we unlock and unleash our personal power, whether we're a man, a woman, or anything else we want to be, we really unlock power that no one can take away from us ever. Our internal power, it comes with us. And so my mission more broadly is to heal disempowerment. And the way we do that is we unlock the feminine powers within us, no matter who we are. So that is a way of looking at the idea of feminine power and internal power that really is accessible to everybody. The epiphanies, I had two epiphanies, one with men and one with women, which is where this got interesting to me. And
Mm,
the short version is that I used to be a marketing consultant. I was in corporate marketing for many years, and I was a
mhm,
marketing consultant. I was doing strategic branding. I was working with all these entrepreneurial founders, mostly founders and leaders in small companies on their marketing strategy, their overall strategy, their branding strategy. And I get into these conversations with them about their business and what
mm.
they wanted their business to achieve and what they felt was holding them back. And before you know, we're into a personal conversation. And these were men. These were men running companies. We were into a personal conversation about what they wanted. Why did they create the business?
Yes,
What did they
yeah.
want out of the business? And before you knew it, they're like, you're like our corporate psychologist. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a branding consultant. But it gave me this idea that, oh, you know what? Leaders of organizations are people too. And
Hmm.
what they bring that the workplace and their workplace, the businesses we create, they're expressions of who we are and they're creations we make to become our better selves if we
Yes.
want to. We can use business to get rich, and we can use business to become our better selves.
Uh-huh.
And that's what these men were doing, but they were running into blockages in the business that were either mirroring or they would see relationships with blockages in who they are. And I said, I think coaching would be more interesting than marketing. So I
Right.
switched into coaching. But then when I got it, that was epiphany number one.
Yeah.
Then I got into coaching and I started doing research on leadership and I kept finding all this data. So this was back in 2010, 11, all these research studies about how effective women were as leaders. And I was like,
Mhm.
what? I've been a female leader all my life. I had no idea I was any good. I always thought I was not what
Oh,
the leader was supposed to be.
wow.
And as I studied it more over the years and I wrote about it and I started coaching women, so my private practice is with executive women, my corporate practices was with businesses and mixed teams, mixed gender teams.
Mm,
I began to realize, oh my gosh, what we call leadership, our stereotypes of leadership are coded and default masculine. And
yeah.
that leaves off the table all these resources that human beings have to be effective leaders, which are coded feminine.
Mm.
And I will not bore you with all the research, but
I'm
there's
fascinated
research
there.
there's research that says that. I'm not making
Yeah.
this up. So I took it upon myself to say, you know what, let's go unlock those feminine powers for
Mm.
everybody and bring that into leadership. But even more importantly, empower individuals to believe that they can lead across this broad spectrum of what we've coded masculine and feminine leadership skills. So those were my two epiphanies. That was a very long answer to your
No,
question.
that's beautiful. I love long answers. I can almost imagine that second one was like a mic drop moment of like, oh, of course, because we see society with, historically, men have been at the top for whatever reason that they've managed to get there, probably at some point because of their physicality and the politics and the governance and all of those kind of things. But women who have got to the top have had to adopt the masculine pose in order to be successful in the business world. And one of the things I think of when I was thinking about having a conversation with you is that women still don't have the work-life balance because when they are in the corporate world, they still have to not utilize their feminine uh, not talents, that's the wrong word, their behaviors, the way they are genuinely and naturally, their natural behaviors, because it's still from a distance. I mean, I'm not in the corporate world anymore, but I wonder, and I'm assuming there is still a lot of that, you don't cry in the office. If you've got a problem, you keep it to yourself and you kind of have to deal with it yourself. You're not going to be sharing, you're not going to be going to support other people. So, do you, is it our fault, women, that we haven't shifted the dial more in this, why there are not more women leaders? Because we bring up the boys, but we don't seem to have done it in a way that they appreciate our natural abilities and our natural talents.
It is not our fault.
It's the right answer, thank you.
Yeah, no. However, I will say my own thoughts on this have evolved a lot over the last 15 or 20 years. And what I mean by that is that when I set out on my current business, to help empower women, especially empower
Yeah.
people, but empower women, I did believe at that point that most of the systemic barriers were down or ready to fall down
Right.
when women kind of owned the equality we had to really step into our power.
Mm.
And that if more of us did that, the system would adapt.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is over the last, 15 years, those both those things are true that as women do step into their power, the systems adapt, but the culture as a whole is in a backlash phase. And
Yeah.
so that makes it even harder for everybody, women and men, right? I mean, it's like it's confusing to everybody right now for all kinds of reasons.
Mm.
And the long and the short of it is, I still see with my clients individually that when they own their own authenticity, and to me, authenticity isn't like the thing you want to say you're not saying, it's who you choose to be.
Yeah.
It's becoming your best self by choice and by intention and by experimentation and discovering what works and what is aligned with your values and what is aligned with who you want to be. That level of authenticity almost always works for men and women in the environment they're in. Either the environment adjusts to adapt and accept them, or they say, this is not for me, I'm out. And so as an individual strategy, that still works
Mm.
to kind of step into your power, to claim it, to own it, to be it. And then either the system adapts or you find a system that will accept you and values you. That's totally an individual strategy that works. And so it's not our fault, but it's our opportunity to step into that as individuals. But the culture as a whole has made it harder and harder. I've had no end of clients, corporate and individual, that have just had the systemic support they were getting, whether it was through something called DEI or just um, leaders who were trying to do the right thing, who now feel they don't have to do the right thing,
Right.
and so they've taken out a level of support
Right.
informally as well as formally, and that's making it harder, for everybody. So no, it's not our fault. We absolutely have opportunity, but as leaders, whether it's in an organization, in a community, in a broader influencer kind of way, we do have to decide who we want to be culturally and what we want to stand for. And I believe the best of us will stand for elements of equality and equity that invite everybody's gifts forward. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm committed to.
Yeah. I think the culture is the pivotal part of the jigsaw, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm mixing my metaphors here, because the culture that we see outside in the world is founded on the paradigm of fear, scarcity, and competition, which regular listeners to this podcast will know that I bang on about all the time. And in the community at Collaboration Global, we've um, found our culture on love, connection, and abundance. And we talk about human being first. We don't care what labels you happen to have. You're a human being first, therefore we love you, we trust you and respect you. And from there, everything else comes after. So we don't even acknowledge male or female. We don't even acknowledge those qualities belong to men or women. They're on a spectrum, and we can all adapt and adopt any of those qualities that you want to choose to. But in the world out there, where there are leaders in the world that predicate on fear, scarcity, and competition, it means that those that are in that society are going to have to fight against that in order for them to be who they truly want to be as authentic people. So I had a business partner, and his vision was like, oh yeah, we're going to have a revolution and it's bloodshed on the streets kind of thing. I'm like, well, I'm sure there's another way. There must be another way. So we talk a lot about love as our foundation for what we're creating, but also when you work from a place of love in a business, that changes your whole context and your whole perspective of how things can happen and how you treat people. And I'm not talking lovey-dovey, have you had a bad day? Poor you. I'm talking about strongest empowerment, the thing that connects every single human being on the planet, that has the strength to move mountains when we need to. And it's like, well, if that was in everybody's foundation in their business, what would that business look like? And how would that change? And how would you be supporting your staff or your teams or your managers or your directors to be the leaders that a country needs, not just a business needs? So do you find when you coach people that you are coming across similar problems in if you're coaching a man as opposed to coaching a woman? Is there are you kind of bringing out the same qualities in both, or are you doing it in a different way?
That's a great question. I would say absolutely I run across the same issues. And yes, I often address them in different ways to be sensitive to, the cultural framework that an individual would be coming from. And men and women do come from different cultural frameworks. And I'll give you an example, and I think it addresses the exact kind of thing you're bringing up. And I love finding this dynamic in a coaching engagement because it's always kind of like layers.
Yes. Yeah.
And the way it manifests, so I call it tough love, but the way it manifests is common ways it manifests is let's look at it through the lens of empathy.
Mm.
We hear all the time leaders need to be more empathetic. Well, why is that? Because the default male code leadership model, like you said, it's fierce and competitive, and there's not really any room for empathy in there. And so when we want the traditional stereotypical leader who's male to expand his range of leadership style options, we say be empathetic, add this emotional side to what feels natural to you. So if I'm competitive and tough, add an element of love, add an element of empathy and compassion. And now you will have the breadth of leadership skills available to you to deal with the world.
Tick that box. Yeah, tick that box. You can do that.
Yeah. Sometimes we do need to be competitive. We have competitors in the market. We're putting in competitive proposals. And competition doesn't have to mean smash the enemy. It could mean show up and really offer value that's better or as good as or better than the people who also want that business. Both of those are competitive. So anyway, for a man who's trying to expand his leadership breadth, I would talk about tough love in the sense that being tough comes naturally, doing it in a way that's actually caring for the other person or the other side, that there's caring, balancing there, and that you're holding both of those things. We're going to do what needs to be done. That's the tough part. We're going to do it in a way that's as kind and as compassionate as we can be in the situation. If we have to cut staff, we have to cut staff. Either we all lose or some people lose. And so we're going to do it as kindly as we can. And we're going to do the tough thing. Now, if I'm talking to a woman about the same dynamic in some way coming up, it's not unusual. She's too empathetic. She's leaning into the emotional intelligence that comes naturally to her and which has been rewarded in her as a collaborator and a collaborative leader and someone who gathers everybody's opinions, but maybe hesitates to make decisions, especially hard decisions, or hesitates to take on difficult issues. And I'm saying, you're grounded in this sort of loving approach to leadership, but sometimes we got to have the tough conversations. We have to make the tough decisions, and you have to do both. You have to do what's good for the business and what's good for the people. And so whether I start with the tough and add the love, or the love and add the tough, at the end of the day, the message is the same, which is, as leaders, we live in a world that is competitive. We live in a world that we have coded male and scarce. And we have the option to take on mindsets that allow us to see abundance, that allow us to believe that leading with our humanity to make tough decisions and to do the things that need to be done for the business, not only to survive, but thrive, is
Mm.
going to require more of us. We have to be broader. We have to be more capable as human beings and hold these things together. And when we can do that, we become great leaders. And we
Mm.
begin to have options of the choices we make that give us options we tell ourselves we don't have. Oh, if I have to let people go, they're going to hate me. No,
Yeah.
you can let people go in a way that genuinely hopes for them and does your best to equip them to
Yeah.
move on to something even better for themselves. If that's what you're wishing for, that's what's in your heart, that's what you're trying to enable. If you can give them a severance, you give them a severance. If you can't, you give them advice. If you can't, you give them space to have a brown bag to talk to each other about ways they can help each other look for jobs.
Yes.
There are things you can do that are human if you have to let people go. And you only see those options if you decide that's who you want to be as a culture in your business and as a leader. And so I think I answered your question in
Yes.
terms of,
No.
how do we incorporate this idea of love in the reality that we live in, which is not always loving.
That's a beautiful example because I'd forgotten that back in the day when I was a business coach and I would be part of a networking organization, we had to let people go from that community who weren't delivering on what they said they were going to deliver on. And everyone always used to make me do that bit, asking them to leave. Because at the end of the conversation I had with them, and I didn't mind doing it because I realized that where they were wasn't working for them. So you don't
Right.
need to be here because it isn't working for you. But what I suggest you do is this, 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 and this. And they would quite often thank me for kicking them out of the group.
Yeah.
But it was done with love. It was done with advice and support. It was done with caring and empathy. And I hadn't realized that, but a lot of people were like, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do what you do. That's so horrible what you have to do. What is it though? Because if you've got a square peg in a round hole, that's not serving them by keeping them there just because you don't want to be horrible to them and go, you've got to go. Actually, you're being worse if you're keeping them there. And
Right.
by seeing what that ongoing journey is of that person, if they're part of your team and they're not delivering on what they should be delivering on, maybe they need a course to go on, or maybe they need to change career or pivot or whatever. It's it's a kindness to support them out of that position so that they can go and spread their wings. And quite often, as has been said to me one time, you'll thank me for this one day. And I did when I was let go. I did thank them because I realized that I was just couldn't see the wood for the trees and I was in the thick of it. What I'm curious about, while you were talking, I was thinking about we love to put these traits are on women and these traits are on men, and I'm very much it's either way. In the world we are at the moment, and I don't know if you're getting this as well in the US, but in the UK, it's a bit of a pandemic where people are going off and finding out that they are in one of our members' terms, neurospicy, which means they're neurodivergent or on the spectrum of neurodivergence. And they can, oh, I've got ADHD, I've got this, I've got this. And sometimes they see it as a crutch that will get them through. And sometimes they see it as their superpower, which it is. It is an amazing superpower.
Yeah.
But if you have a superpower, for example, like Asperger's, that you would find it very, very difficult to empathize and put yourself in somebody else's position and help and support them. So, and quite often, if people are going to have something like that, you get more men than women that are in that position where they just don't, well, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying because they don't have the capacity. It's just not in them. How do you spot that and how do you help those kind of people? Or is it something that I've just imagined?
No, I think actually you've tapped into what I think of as a couple of different things, but it all rests on the idea of spectrum.
Mm.
Like, and literally now we're using that word for neurospicy, right?
Yeah.
So we've already talked about two spectrums. One is gender, which there's lots of ways of thinking about that. The way we're talking about it in the leadership context is as a spectrum of mental and emotional characteristics we can use as leaders. There
Yeah.
are spectrums also, so that's kind of generic, and the way we assign masculinity or femininity to these human traits.
Yeah.
You're talking about a more of a mental processing way of doing things emotionally versus mentally, which underlies that, and which often is ascribed to the genders as well. And what's interesting to me about this dynamic that you're identifying is that for a long time it was only boys who were getting diagnosed,
Yes, that's true.
and
Yeah.
now women and girls are getting diagnosed because shockingly it shows up a little differently.
Mm,
And to me, what's most interesting, and so my clients, I would say that those that are self-identifying, on the spectrum, so to speak, they're not in an extreme range. They're in leadership positions, so they're masking and they're adapting, and they're functioning, they're high functioning in that way.
mm,
But what's interesting to me is that even the ones who don't self-identify with a condition like that have, we all have proclivities. We
right.
all have natural strengths on this emotional versus intellectual kind of range. And it isn't as easy as saying, oh, you're good, you can read emotions and you can't. Like I have one client, she's very much, in that space. She has a very responsible role. She can be highly empathetic, but she struggles to use that in her leadership capacity.
Yeah,
So she sees their pain, but she doesn't know she can't read how they need to be talked to.
right.
So that's a different problem than someone who really can't read the pain, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
my point is that no matter where we are on the spectrum, and by the way, there is a reversal, someone that's so emotional, they're so empathic, they're so
That would be me.
aware of the emotions, they struggle to
Yeah,
to sort of get past that, to say, well, let's just look at some facts here and just
yeah,
let's get
yeah,
outside the emotional space a little bit.
yeah.
So my point is that all of us come with sort of these strengths that can be weaknesses.
Mm.
And what I find is in the work I do with people is becoming functional depends on two things. One is your own curiosity about who you are and what your strengths are and where your growth path is. And if you are curious about that, you'll find your stretch zone and you'll work in it and you will become more adaptive and you'll become more high functioning in that area, whether you're on the emotional side or the intellectual side or somewhere in the middle. So,
Mm,
so it's a function of your own desire to become your best self in more environments. And
yeah,
secondly, it's the environments. Some people pick environments to work in that either feed their strengths and don't put them in their stretch zones, or so put them in their stretch zones, they can just sort of shut down their own strengths and say, I've learned to function in an environment where I just have to have emotions. I don't have to do analytics and make hard decisions and look at facts, and so I don't
mm,
have to be in that stretch zone for me. And
mm,
then there are the people who are like, I don't want to protect myself that much. I want to grow more. And I want to look for an environment that, does value who I am, but also will give me an opportunity to grow. And that environment may be the industry, the organization, the boss you're with, the team and the boss you're with. And there's personal dimensions of that. Who are you partnered with? Who is your family? Who are your friends? Who are you surrounding yourself with and what are they bringing out in you? And those are just universal human opportunities that we have regardless of where we are. So when I work with people, I'm trying to decrypt that code for them, both professionally and if relevant personally, and help them see doors they're not opening in their own stretch zone to expand and explore, what they could be if they focused more on it.
So do you find you're working more with people that are already leaders but don't feel they're effective leaders, or that people that are looking, aspiring to be leaders along the way?
I work with both. Most of my clients really, they are leaders and they've hit
Mm,
a wall. It
right.
could be a career, a glass ceiling, which by the way, there's often inner ceilings and invisible ceilings within us that
Yes.
are the stories we tell ourselves, which may or may not mirror what we're experiencing externally. But so sometimes it's a career block. Sometimes it's not. It's just, I just got new authority and I'm not really using it very because
Yeah,
I'm a little over my head here.
yeah,
Um, or teams that are not really fully, they're all strong people, but as a team, they're not really working very well together, for example.
yeah.
So
Bit of
most
ego
of my work
going.
is with that. People who need to scale themselves to scale their business.
Mm.
That's mostly who I'm working with, or people who want to succeed without sacrificing their souls. So it's two versions of the same
Yes.
problem.
Yeah.
Um, but then I do work with emerging leaders as well through a program where I'm coaching, new leaders. And that's fun because, they don't have the experience to be jaded. They're just curious
Wow.
about how does this management thing work? And I
Yeah.
love that work.
Yeah. It's like fresh meat. You can
Yes, and
get
I can't
started.
tell you I can't tell you how many times, I'm working with an emergent leader on how to empower an employee. And the next day I'm doing it with the experienced leader that's been, quote, empowering employees for 20 years and still hitting a wall with getting the most
Wow.
out of their team. So these are
Wow.
perpetual challenges.
I do like that expression that you used, an invisible glass ceiling. That we all have those things, don't we? And I remember once I was on a course, and I was explaining a problem I have that was just so frustrating about people not doing what I wanted them to do. And he said, "Well, tell me the scenario." And I went through the whole scenario of what happens. And he just went, "And how's that working out for you?" I thought, what a brilliant question. Because if you just ask that of yourself with everything where you're hitting that brick wall, how's it working out for you? So what you're doing isn't working.
Right.
So what could work if you did it differently? And then, ironically, I changed, but I didn't tell anybody that I was changing. And
Mhm.
everybody kind of noticed what the hell's going on. And bit by bit, everyone else accommodated themselves around me because I wasn't this banshee yelling at people anymore. I was just calm and confident and quiet and everything. And I'm like, what's going on? This is weird. And eventually it all just fell into place. And then about, I don't know, a year later, I told people what was going on. And the image they had of me that they were still keeping of me, I was like, so one of the things was I was always late for things, very historical, inherited from my dad thing that I was always late for things. So about a year later, my husband says, "Oh, oh, you're always late for things anyway." I said, "Am I?" He said, "Yeah, you're always late." I said, "So when was the last time I was late?" What? I said, "I'll tell you the last time I was late. It was last year, last July." Da, 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 da. Really? And then it all came out, and I went through the whole scenario. But you don't know you've got this glass ceiling. That's the point I'm making. And to have somebody be able to see it for you and ask that question of like, so how's it working out? How'd that work out for you, Jill? And I remember that to this day. I want it on a t-shirt. I think it's just such a good question because you go, it's just not working. So if you're in a business or you're in a large organization and maybe your boss isn't doing the right things, or maybe you're the new boss, that's a good thing to ask yourself every day. If something doesn't quite go the way you want it to, it starts with you, doesn't it? It all starts with where you're at, how confident you are inside, what your limiting beliefs are, what your triggers are, what sets you off, and what your solutions currently are, and what they could be along the way. It's fascinating. I'm just interested, Dana, when we all fall into these things, don't we? And for me, it was around about 2007, I became a square peg in a square hole when I found out somebody told me you should be a coach. I'm like, really? Okay, I'll give it a go. And then I loved it, absolutely loved it. And you're in a square peg in a square hole now. You obviously you're glowing with what you're doing, and potentially not only are you helping individuals to change who they are in their leadership role, but you are giving them as an example how to be a leader, and potentially you could be changing hundreds of thousands of people into leadership, and that could have a knock-on effect down the line. Where did this start from the point of view of when you were like 7 or 8? What was your happy place? What did you do that kind of um, just made you feel like content, really in your happy space?
That's an interesting question. Um, I will answer it in two ways. One is the thing that happened was I my parents said in summer break, you have to get out and get some exercise. So we're going to put you on the swim team. I was like, I don't want to go on the swim team. And then I love being on the swim team. So all I want to do was go swimming. And they're like, you have to read books because you're always outside. So the next summer they said, you can't be on the swim team if you don't read a book a month. And
Okay.
before you knew it, I was reading 4 books a month or 5 books a month.
God bless your parents. Well done.
Exactly. But what was interesting, so the answer to the question is my happy place was laying on the couch reading a book, just
Yes.
completely absorbed
Oh,
in
love
this
it.
other world.
Different world, yeah.
Exactly. And what happened though, so what did that unlock and unleash that leads to the work that I do? I love being a square peg in a square hole like that.
Yeah.
I do feel that way finally after a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but what was interesting is now I look back on it, through an archetypal lens, and I realized like that early thing, it turned on. So I'm a magician archetype, and magician archetypes, we
Yeah.
exist to reframe reality. We
Oh,
take the
lovely.
reality that you have and we ask that question, like that person who said to you, I couldn't let those people go, but now it's their responsibility. And they say that to me. It's like, I can't do this. And I'm saying, what story
Yeah.
are you listening to that says I can't do it? If you can't
Yeah.
do that, what can you do? And that question gets them to go, oh, well, I can do it with the hope they do better, that they move on to something better. And so
Yeah.
so my talent is just to do that, the questions that reframe reality for people. Um, and I wanted to go back to something you said because it's so important. It's important to this whole conversation, but also an example of this reframing that I'm talking
Mm.
about. Because we do have the power within ourselves. And what's interesting is you said it starts with us, and
Yeah.
it does and it doesn't. And what I mean by that is we're all in systems. Relationships are systems, teams
Yeah.
are systems, organizations are systems, countries are systems, industries are systems. They're all systems, and we're all floating around in these systems. We
Mm.
cannot exist independent of them, and they do impinge on us and put limitations on us. But you identified the power that we have by saying when you made the change, other people adjusted. The system adjusted when you took responsibility, not for the whole system, but for the piece that you
Yeah.
actually have responsibility for. And so coming back to what I talk about with the internal power is that whoever we are in the systems we're in, we do have sovereignty and authority over ourselves. And when we're able to distinguish what we have, what do we control and what do we not control, both
Mm.
within ourselves and with the authority that we have granted to us in the system.
Yeah.
Once we have identified what we control, we can be that butterfly effect. We can say, I can't change all this, but I can change this. Let me change that. Let me
Yeah.
change this. Let me not be late. Let me show up with more integrity. Let me show up not triggered. Let me show up with curiosity. What will
Mm.
happen? Let's be a scientist and see what happens. And what happens is the butterfly flies its little wings and the system starts to adjust.
Yeah.
And that's a power we all carry. And when I work with clients, I am constantly just saying, if you do nothing but exercise that power you have, you will be constantly making your environment better for yourself and the people that you care about. But you're go back to the little flutters of the butterfly wings, you're
Yeah.
changing the system. And when you're intentional and consistent about it, you can make huge changes with these small little adjustments to yourself, then in your team. As your authority grows, you're able to make adjustments and make changes far, far beyond you.
Yeah. And that brings me to my favorite quote, which is from Margaret Mead, anthropologist, who said, "Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world, for indeed
Yeah.
it is the only thing that ever has." And that, in essence, is what Collaboration Global is all about. It's like bringing good people together to do little things to support each other and then help other people that can't help themselves. And bit by bit by bit, the ripples on the pond go out, and more people see that, okay, well, I might not have done a good thing today, but I can do a good thing tomorrow. And that good thing might just be smiling at somebody on the train, or having a conversation, or helping somebody pick up some litter, or whatever it is. We can all take. One of our members, Gina Gardner, talks about radical responsibility. We all
Mhm.
think we've got, oh, what can I do on my own? Well, have radical responsibility for things that you do. You know, where do you buy your food from? Where do you, are you looking at the conservation? Are you looking at the environment? Are you, all those little things? Do you turn your tap off when you brush your teeth and save water? It's a little thing, but if everybody did it, all of a sudden we're making the fluttering of that butterfly, as you say. It's making a difference. It's making a difference somewhere to someone. Do you know the starfish story where the guy,
Yes.
you know, for those of you who don't know, a guy's walking along a beach and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of starfish that have been beached up with the wave. And he's picking each one up and throwing it back into the sea. And a guy comes along and says, what are you doing that for? You're never going to help all of them. So he picks the next starfish up and flings it in the sea. He says, no, but I helped that one. And then he picks another one and that one. And so you do what you can do. Do what you can. Never feel that a small thing that you are doing is useless, because if everybody else was doing it as well, and most people do, make that difference, and then it will change our world. It's exactly like having female leaders. It's not necessarily we need female leaders. We don't need female leaders. We need men and women to be leaders from a caring, loving space. So
Mhm.
I don't really care what your gender is. But if you want to be leading other people, you have to be empathetic. You have to have compassion. You have to be able to lead in a, I don't know if there's one word for it. There are so many um, parts of leadership that you just all encompass loving space for your business. And I think if your business is growing from a loving space, people will be drawn to it. People will want to connect with it. People will want to work with you because they can feel that energy that you're emanating from that happy place.
Can I tell you a short story about the
Please
starfish?
do. Yes, lovely.
So when I have two sons, and I came into this business when they were sort of in high school. You know, they were older. I'd done as much of the formative work on them as I could, I think, and kind of they were launching themselves.
Oh,
And but I became a coach, and as they go off into the world, I'm doing this work. And my older son was in college about to leave, and he started a blog, and he was working in Honduras in a microfinance nonprofit in his last summer, and then he went to work for a year after he graduated college there. And he wrote a blog, and he called it The Starfish. And I said, why? And I'd never heard that story before, the starfish story. I said,
lovely.
why? And it was brilliant. He's writing about his life in rural Honduras, helping these people, with $10, having a savings program to put $10 every 2 months away, and they got to the point they could buy a house,
Yeah.
and he was just doing this amazing work. I said, why did you call it the starfish? And he told me that story. And I said, I can't believe, yeah, I mean, like my son is like having this epiphany that if he just throws one starfish in, it makes a difference to that starfish. This 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid. And he goes, Mom, I learned it from you. And
Oh,
I just
bless
kind of fell
him.
apart. I mean, I don't know that
Yeah.
he saw that, but you know, he was one of my first starfish, right?
Yes, exactly. Oh, how lovely. What a nice young man. What a nice young man. But for him
He's
to acknowledge and know where it came from rather than they just think, oh, yeah, I've always thought things like that. It's no, it's like mum has taught me, she's taught me well. And now he's passing it on. It's that
Oh yeah,
butterfly.
and he still is. He's still doing amazing work in the world.
That's amazing. I mean, talking about butterflies as well, one of our members at Collaboration Global, some of people will have heard this before, so I make no apologies because I'm very proud that she joined us with a mission to help children in Pakistan get out of poverty through education. So she was teaching, I think, a dozen children in a tent, and through another member, she was able to get some income coming in, and she started literally building the school. And then she had 15, and then she had 20, and then she was giving them a school uniform so that she was clothing them. She fed them 3 times a day. And then more
Wow.
children and more children, and more funds were coming in, and more funds were coming in. And then the building went on second floor. That's very unusual in her village, not just ground floor, it went upstairs as well. It was pretty cool. But she was a lone woman in a village woman, second class citizen, third caste. Why would I even talk to her? Doing it on her own without a man to support her. And everyone was like, what are you doing? You're crazy. What's the point? You're going to fail. It's going to be terrible. And within 6 months, and the second floor went onto the building, and she had like over 100 children that she was looking after and helping them out of poverty. They were now going, oh, have you met Noreen? She's from our village, you know, she comes from our village. Yeah, yeah, you should see what she's doing. She's doing this amazing school. The butterfly is still going. Now she's got over 200 children, and the school's nearly finished. And other villages, people are going, I want to do that. How did you do that? Can you help me to do that as well?
That's right.
So,
And speaking to the audience of, let's just call ourselves change makers, right? And change makers through businesses, organizations, whether it's a nonprofit like that or a for-profit. I used to do a radio show where I interviewed founders of small companies. And I was constantly, for like 2 or 3 years, I was doing these interviews. I'm like, what is the thing we all have in common? Like, what is it? Is it, we were born with silver spoons in our mouths, or we were born in poverty, or what is it?
yeah.
Male, female, education, whatever. There's only one thing that story exemplifies, but which I think I take to heart and I try to give to all my clients and everyone I know, which is we just never give up. We experience failure. We experience setbacks. We have the villagers saying, you're going to fail. That's crazy. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And there's something in us going, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to, even if I have to step all the way back from the beginning and start over or do it, I'm going to figure this out. And that's the only thing we all have in common that makes us successful, whether we end up, rich or not. And I think you add that other element, which is love. We do it out of love. We do it because we want to be better people and we want the world to be better because we're in it. And if we never give up on that mission, we are successful and the world gets better.
Yeah.
And our people we care about get better.
And I think people with that attitude, their definition of success doesn't always equate to finance and money. It equates to a wealth of your heart. You can be, rich and wealthy in many, many other areas. It's not about the stuff you have managed to accumulate. It's about the relationships and the connections that you build during your lifetime and the things that you can do to make an impact. And that's why I love it when businesses come to us and join Collaboration Global. And the commonality is they're all up to some good. And what I love is that the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in the US and many other countries, the SME world, small, medium enterprises, have got all of the power. They employ the most people, they do the most turnover, they bring all this to the economy, but they've got hardly any control. So if we can turn our businesses into businesses for good, then we're going to have a bigger impact for those people that can't create their own business or aren't able to do A, B, or C, or struggle with what they're doing. And if we don't start taking action and using our businesses as tools to help other people, then the governments of this world possibly aren't going to be able to do it for them because politics doesn't seem to be working at the moment. So for me, understanding what true leadership is, understanding how powerful our businesses are as vehicles for good, we are the ones that are going to make a difference in the world. We are the ones that are going to transform our planet to be one where humanity doesn't implode because we're being too selfish or too competitive or too dog eat dog. It's like, no, let's just help each other. Forget all the differences around. Let's look at the differences out of curiosity and go, wow, you're like that. Oh, that's amazing. Let me help you. You can help me do this. And together, rather than be against each other all the time in this competitive fear and scarcity space, we go, no, let's share the love. It sounds like it's a soppy word, but actually it's our superpower. And with all the other things that we've got going on, we've got the tools, we've got the capacity to really change our world. And I think you're one of the people that can do it with what you're doing. I mean, we start with unlocking feminine power in leadership. Actually, so much bigger than that, Dana, isn't it?
It is. It is.
No wonder your son is learning so much from you, and he's not going to stop, is he? I think it's brilliant, and he'll be teaching people as well. It's lovely.
Oh, he is. He is. He's my hero. Actually, both my
Oh,
sons are my heroes. They're
of course
both
they are.
doing
Yeah,
amazing things.
yeah, that's lovely. I love that whole story. Thank you. Um, just looked at the time. I feel like we could carry on part two, part three, maybe. But for
We
now,
could.
I'm going to call it to a halt because what you've just told us is very inspiring. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed it. If people are interested, maybe they want to be an empowered leader, male or female, but you take on all cases, don't you? Let's
Oh,
empower
yeah.
people in the right way. How do people get hold of you? What's the easiest way for people to get in touch?
The easiest way is two ways. My website, in Power Coaching, and that's IN inside, inpowercoaching.com. But I'm also on LinkedIn. My name, Dana Theus, and I'll send you the links for that. But I write in other spaces, but those are kind of the main places to reach out. And I not only love the work I do and working with the people I do, but I love connecting with people like you and your community that are really committed to not listening to all those stories in the outside world that it's all going to hell in a handbasket and we just have to live with that. We can make a difference. We are making differences, and that's our job here on earth. So I'm
Yeah.
all for aligning with people who have that core belief.
One starfish at a time.
One
That's what we're
starfish at
doing.
a time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And who knows, Dana may be at our next Collaboration Global session one day, and you might meet her there. Or if you want to come along and meet our community, just go to collaborationglobal.org. That's the website. Or you can find us on Eventbrite as well, and also on LinkedIn. Come and find us, and hopefully we will get to meet you soon as well. Thank you again, Dana. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you. Take care.